Every year on the 4th of July, millions of Americans gather with family and friends to celebrate one of the most important days in the nation's history. The sky lights up with spectacular fireworks. Parades fill city streets. The American flag waves proudly from homes and public buildings. Children laugh, music plays, and communities come together in celebration. But have you ever wondered why this day matters so much? Why is the 4th of July considered the birthday of the United States? What events transformed 13 British colonies into an independent nation? The answers lie in a story of courage, sacrifice, political ideals, and the determination of ordinary people to shape their own future. Today, we'll journey back to the 18th century to uncover the events that led to American independence and explore why this historic day continues to inspire millions around the world. Before the United States existed, the eastern coast of North America was home to 13 British colonies. These colonies stretched from New Hampshire in the north to Georgia in the south. Although united under British rule, each colony had its own traditions, local government, economy, and way of life. In New England, many families relied on fishing, shipbuilding, and trade. The middle colonies prospered through farming and commerce. The southern colonies were known for large plantations producing crops such as tobacco, rice, and indigo. Despite their differences, many colonists shared one belief: they valued local decision-making and expected a degree of self-government. For many years, their relationship with Britain remained relatively stable. Colonists considered themselves loyal subjects of the British Crown, and many were proud of their connection to one of the world's most powerful empires. Yet beneath the surface, tensions were beginning to grow. In the mid-18th century, Britain emerged from a costly conflict known as the French and Indian War. Although Britain had expanded its territory, the war left the government deeply in debt. British leaders believed the American colonies should help pay for the expense of defending the empire. Parliament introduced new taxes, including duties on printed materials, imported goods, and tea. To many officials in London, these taxes seemed reasonable. But many colonists strongly disagreed. Many officials in London, these taxes seemed reasonable. But many colonists strongly disagreed. They argued that they had no elected representatives in Parliament and therefore should not be taxed without having a voice in the decisions. Their complaint became famous in a simple phrase: "No taxation without representation." That slogan quickly spread throughout the colonies, becoming a powerful symbol of resistance. Across the colonies, merchants, artisans, farmers, and political leaders began organizing protests. Many refused to buy British goods. Others formed local committees to coordinate resistance. Pamphlets, newspapers, and public meetings spread revolutionary ideas at an unprecedented pace. People who had once accepted British authority began asking difficult questions. Who should make the laws? Who should control taxation? What rights belong to ordinary citizens? These discussions laid the intellectual foundation for a movement that would soon change history. The conflict between Britain and its American colonies was no longer just about taxes. It had become a struggle over rights, representation, and the future of self-government. In the next chapter, tensions would erupt into dramatic acts of protest, including one event that became a defining symbol of resistance: the Boston Tea Party. Stay with us as the road to independence continues. By the early 1770s, tensions between Britain and the American colonies had reached a breaking point. Although Parliament had repealed some unpopular taxes, one remained: the tax on tea. In 1773, the British government passed the Tea Act. At first glance, the law appeared to lower the price of tea. But many colonists saw something much more dangerous. The Tea Act gave the British East India Company special privileges, allowing it to sell tea directly in the colonies while maintaining Parliament's right to tax the colonists. To many Americans, buying the tea meant accepting Britain's authority to tax them without their consent. Across the colonies, merchants refused to unload British tea ships. Public meetings grew larger. Patriotic speeches echoed through town halls and taverns. Citizens vowed they would not surrender what they believed were their rights. Boston, Massachusetts, soon became the center of resistance. On the evening of December 16, 1773, one of the most famous protests in American history unfolded. A group of colonists, many associated with the Sons of Liberty, disguised themselves in clothing inspired by Native American attire. Their disguise symbolized a new American identity, separate from Britain. Under the cover of darkness, they boarded 3 British ships anchored in Boston Harbor. Working quickly and with remarkable discipline, they smashed open hundreds of wooden chests filled with tea. One after another, the crates were thrown into the icy waters below. More than 340 chests of tea, worth a tremendous sum at the time, were destroyed. Interestingly, the protesters took great care not to damage the ships themselves or steal other property. Their target was the tea and the tax it represented. When dawn arrived, Boston Harbor was covered with floating tea leaves. News of the event spread rapidly across the Atlantic. Britain responded swiftly. King George III and Parliament were determined to restore order. In 1774, a series of harsh laws were passed. The British called them the Coercive Acts. The colonists gave them another name, the Intolerable Acts. Boston Harbor was closed until the destroyed tea had been paid for. Massachusetts lost many of its rights to self-government. British troops increased their presence throughout the colony rather than frightening the colonists into obedience. These measures had the opposite effect. People from different colonies began supporting one another. What had once been local protests became a united movement. As we come to the end of our journey, let's reflect on the remarkable story behind the 4th of July. What began as growing frustration over taxation and political representation evolved into one of the most influential independence movements in history. The 13 American colonies challenged the authority of one of the world's most powerful empires. They endured years of hardship, uncertainty, and war, driven by the belief that people should have a voice in how they are governed. On July 4, 1776, the adoption of the Declaration of Independence marked a turning point. It proclaimed that all people are created equal and are entitled to fundamental rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. While the Revolutionary War continued for several years after the Declaration, July 4th became the enduring symbol of the birth of a new nation and the ideals on which it was founded. Today, Independence Day is celebrated with fireworks, parades, concerts, family gatherings, community events, and patriotic ceremonies across the United States. For many, it is a time to honor the sacrifices of those who fought for independence and to reflect on the nation's history and values. The story of the 4th of July also reminds us that history is shaped by ordinary people making extraordinary choices. The debates, decisions, and sacrifices of the 18th century continue to influence democratic ideals around the world. Whether you're watching from the United States or from another part of the world, understanding this history helps us appreciate why Independence Day remains one of America's most significant national holidays. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you enjoyed this